Cool guys, good morning. How are you guys doing? So I am Dane. I work at a company called SenseFirst. Can you guys hear me? I don't know where to hold the mic. Is this alright? Alright. Cool. So the first slide. So I'm Dane Goodwin. I work at a company called SenseFirst. I started there through an internship about 2 years ago, and it's an awesome job. And I'm talking today about hacking an internal network. Right, so it's a common thing in the industry. I mean, we get an internal network assessment. We go there, but I mean, it's to the point where, specifically on Active Directory domains, where the tools that we use and the kind of process that we follow has been streamlined to the point where there's tools like Mimikatz, Nmap, things like that, that work so well and are so easy to use that I don't feel that we should be spending our time really going after domain administrator, which is typically the first thing that we look for. But rather I want to be spending time going after like business critical apps, you know, like financials, things like that. But typically we need domain administrator access to get there. So I took a step back over a few assessments, so over the last sort of year and a half. And I tried to identify things that I was doing that were the same across different clients, and I tried to identify things that were different across different clients. And I kind of, you know, so I monitored it, I wrote it down, I kept track of it. And I kind of, so over time, I identified sort of 4 steps that we use when you go to, when you're trying to get from having network cable to having domain administrator access. And the first thing that we do is we footprint it. So there's, you know, we take a look at what's around us. We look at the information that's presented. So, I mean, there's a ton of things that we usually do. Like you can do a zone transfer on the domain controllers, get a list of domain controllers that are there. If you port scan the net ranges that those things fall into, you very quickly get you know, a lot of hosts that you can look at. So then you port scan those hosts, you see what services are running, and you get an idea of what's around you. So I know that over a few assessments, like Dominic has showed me cool tricks where if you do DNS queries across ranges where you have no idea if there's anything in there, then you can kind of very quickly find hosts, port scan hosts that those the port scan ranges that those hosts fall into. I mean, there's tons of things that we've figured out over time. But so, you know, great, once you've found a ton of hosts that you know about, you port scan them, you know what services they're running. The next thing you do is you look for what we call low-hanging fruit. So we look for, so I mean, I always hop on these 3. I mean, there's tons more, but you look at, so like weak SQL credits. That's a cool thing. So weak Tomcat credits give you the same thing where, you know, just by knowing that, just by knowing those credits, you can upload a shell on the computer and get a ton of stuff. So you find things like that, you try and get, you're uploading the interpreter. So you find Metasploit admin. I mean, it's become so streamlined now, it's super easy. You run Mimikatz on it, you look for LSA secrets, you get as much information about those hosts as you can, and then you carry on using whatever you find on that host across the footprint until eventually you find administrative creds, at which point you consider yourself done. But so again, there's so many tools that we use to do this, but they become super simple to use. I mean, it's just one-liners all over the place. It's not a difficult thing nowadays. So, so over time, I've tried to identify the things that I do, and I've tried to script each step so that I can kind of, you know, run it with minimal effort from me. So I try to break down the work so that things would happen with sort of net ranges instead of entire scopes, kind of stuff like that. And eventually, so over time, I've come up with, this is my tool. It's called AutoDANE, which stands for Automatic Domain Administration and Network Exploitation. Thanks, man. So it's a cool thing. So basically what I do, yes, great.
You replace yourself with a small script.
I'm trying to. What's all of you guys? So basically, I mean, this is a tool I've been working on it for some time. I released it a few months ago at BSidesCapeTown. But so the first tool that I released, I kind of, you know, I mashed together a bunch of stuff. I tried to get a proof of concept which worked well enough to show, right? And, you know, I released it into the industry and I got a ton of great feedback from, like, a lot of guys. And so what I did is I tried to make it, so I tried to model it more of after Nmap, the way that the scripts work there. And I tried to build a cool, like, scripting engine where you can kind of, so I built plugins which do little things, and then I tried to make an engine which can follow logic that we specify. And the end result is, I mean, you can file this at just about anything. And I mean, it does a good job footprinting whatever environment it gets put into. and it looks for vulns, exploits them, it does a whole lot of stuff. So I'll run you through some of the features that I have. So I mean, I built it using Python, because I like Python. I ran it, so the UE is done with PyQt. It makes it super easy to get a whole lot of stuff done really quickly. So I've tried to use at this point industry standard tools, so like a port scan, PenLab, and I use a lot of the nmap scripts for vuln scanning. So I've got one or two things which I've made now that work a little bit better. But so then with firing like Mimikatz up on a box, I've just set up a mature shell, run it against that. It works really well. But so in terms of the project itself, it's quite a big thing. It's got a lot of moving parts. It's quite a difficult thing. So like setting up the Metasploit automation it's a bit of a pain. So it's not meant to be automated, it seems. Like they've given us an RPC interface, which lets you connect like via anything. You can run Metasploit commands with it. And but the thing is, if you create one object in Python and then you create another one in the same memory space, only the first one works, which is super frustrating. So you can't have two running in different threads. It's impossible. Only one of them will ever work. At the same time, Metasploit gives you the auto-run scripts, which lets you set up a bunch of different commands that you want to run when you get a thing back. If you use that with the RPC functions, then as soon as the auto-run script starts to run, you do this, which is no good to anybody. So there's a ton of things like that that I've figured out that I've had to try and fix. Also, just automating the commands, like trying to get it so that it can run consistently across different environments is quite frustrating because there's a ton of ways that it can fall over. The whole thing is quite brutal. But as soon as it does, it doesn't really tell you that it has. So you kind of need to figure it out. But I mean, I've come over across a lot of those. So we've set up essentially, we've got a training lab. We set it up in the AWS infrastructure, and so we've got a thing which it's a small domain. It's got a domain controller, two hosts, SQL servers that are on the domain. The idea was to try and set up a thing that had a kind of production SQL server, a development SQL server, and the domain that you can pivot on, and then a couple other boxes which are really irrelevant. And so when I fired it up against that, so that's kind of what what we're looking at. That's kind of what you see. So when you fire it up against that, it tries to footprint the environment that it's given. And so you see there on the left, it gives you a list, so it groups everything by the class C that it calls it. And then it tries to, so when it does run Metasploit against it, it runs this info, it tries to say whatever information it can about the host. It gives you a list of the ports that are there, the vulns, and then, so I try to get domain creds, I differentiate between domain and local cred. But it works really well. So I think that another thing that's really cool is that, all of this information is there, it's shown quite neatly here, but at the same time, when it gets to more than 3 hosts, like 3,000 hosts, which is typically a reasonable number, then all of this stuff is easily accessible, it's easy to query, it's easy to look through. So carrying on with the lab, so there's weak SQL creds on the development SQL server. So we find that with the nmap script, I run Metasploit against it, I get it back. And so when I get the creds, I cut them out and I get that set of creds there, which is awesome. So then I find those creds. The next step in the printing process is to use those creds against all the different Windows boxes that we found in the domain, right? To try and see which ones it can log into. So in this case, it was those three. The top one was the domain controller. There was the two other SQL boxes. So in this case, the prac was that you find that set of creds on that box, use those creds to put onto the prod SQL server because they work there, but they don't work anywhere else. And then, so the idea is to run psexec against the box, get the creds on the second box, and be able to pivot onto the domain controller, which is really the end goal. And so running that, then we run Mimikatz to get a second set of credentials, which works awesome. And so I try and keep track of which creds work where. And so here you can see, so this became a little bit tricky. I figured this out only recently, but the idea is to see, like when you first get a set of creds, I validate them on the box that I found them on to make sure that they're correct, to try and not, brute force accounts that are not valid. But so, like what this shows you here is not just creds that are correct, but creds that have some level of access on the box. Because as soon as you try any set of valid creds on any box, as long as the username and password is correct, it'll tell you if you run Hydra against it, it'll tell you that it works. So what this does is afterwards it sees if you can RDP into the box. The idea being that it gives you some idea that these creds can do something, not just the correct. So to summarize, so the point is again that all of this stuff is, I mean, it's very automatable. It's there's a ton of stuff that there's so much information around that we can use that we can learn off. I mean, anybody in the industry will tell you it's not a difficult thing to do. But everybody that goes on these projects, kind of goes through the motions, sees what's there. So I've tried to identify this process, which is transferable. I can run it across different environments. And so these are the steps that I've tried to take to automate the process. So, I mean, in a bigger sense, it's a cool thing to release a tool and see this is what's there. But the idea that I have for this thing is that, like small companies, very small businesses, they can take something like this and run it against their environments and see just whether they pass this test or not. The idea is that people can take this and run it by themselves and see if they have these vulns on the network. And if they do, then they can fix it to the point where this tool stops working, at which point they'll know that they are above, at least they're above that. So then as soon as they get a pen tester in, they'll get a more valuable report. The second thing where people can run this is for companies with sensitive information that don't necessarily want a third party involved, or that don't really want to hire a pen testing company, they can run this and get an idea of the security posture on the internal network also. Also, where I've been using this is, I mean, I can run this, if I send this to the client the day before the assessment starts, my assessment starts, then I can run this and get a lot of information automatically just with the footprint and the basic vuln scanning. And also, like while on it, I mean, again, it saves the information, saves the footprint in a really usable way. So it's a cool thing. I mean, it works really well now. I've taken it quite far. I mean, it's evolved quite a lot. But so, I mean, really the end goal of the thing is to make it so that it's more difficult for me to do my job. I think there's a ton of these things. I mean, the low-hanging fruits has been around since forever. And I think that's wrong that companies pay to find out that they have it when it's such a simple thing for them to check using open source tools. So the idea with this is that I'm trying to distill the knowledge that we have in the industry that people outside of it can run it without necessarily hiring a pen tester. So that when the pen tester does come, it's more difficult for me to do my job. So then the clients in turn gets more valuable information from us. And so again, I've done a lot of work with the project. It's looking pretty good. It's working very well. There's a ton of different things that I still want to add to it, but I'm getting through these things slowly but surely. And finally, it's publicly available. So I released it again quite a few months ago. It's available on the SensePost GitHub page. It's there you can get it. And I mean, I'm trying to now get it so that people can test it, that people in the industry can run it, they can see it, see how it works. I'm trying to get as much feedback as I can from you guys. It's works well, but I'm looking for more places to test it. But I can only test it in active directory environments, and there's only so many of those around. So have you guys got any questions? Yes.
How long would this take to run against the network of say 10,000?
So some of it will take quite a long time, right? So it depends. I've made it so that the threading model is quite sophisticated, it works quite well. So the footprinting of that takes about maybe a day or a day and a half. But running BSidesCapeTown with the Metasploit commands that I've got takes a little while. So Dominic yesterday showed me a bunch of tools that I can use that get me similar information way quicker without having to use Metasploit. So I'm looking at doing stuff like that so I can maybe make it run a lot quicker. But so the initial footprinting and vuln scanning is quite quick. Getting Metasploit and all of that can take some time. Yeah. Any? Benchmarks, no. No, it's quite fresh. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
It's a bit of a technical question. Do you mind going to the footprinting slide?
that
into the footprinting side.
No, to the footprinting slide.
Footprinting slide, sure. So I've actually I kind of brushed through my slides. I've got tons of time for Q&A. So you want footprinting this one?
No, I meant the one where you gave a screenshot of the output of the tool.
Output of the tool, okay.
So I'm just,
This one?
Yeah. I'm just wondering, I see there you've got a little box there for credentials.
Yes.
Is it possible to fingerprint that from the tiny website?
How do you mean?
I'm assuming this is supposed to give you an idea of what you can find on a box, so what the listing services are, what the vulnerabilities are. Is it possible, did you find a way to fingerprint what credentials are on the machine without opening the box first?
So that's a very good question, and I think it's a core feature of this application specifically, is that on a network, again, with say 30,000 hosts, there'll be maybe 20 or 30 with weak vulnerabilities that we get, like the weak SQL creds or something lame like that. So the point is then, like with the other boxes that are on the network, what we do, there's a tool called BSidesCapeTown, which lets you run commands on any box. So the idea is that you then don't own the box really, using valid credentials that you found in other places on the network. And then you log into the box and you get the same information like that. So you're not, yes?
So does that basically represent what credentials you have that are valid against that machine?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll go into a little bit more detail with that now. So this box here, the local credentials field, so again, like it's getting a little bit like technical, right? But the local credentials tells me which creds are found on this box. Because that's how they work. The domain credentials are shared. So what that tells me is the amount of credentials that I have that let me log into that box that are found for that domain.
And then that number for impersonation tokens, did you get that after logging into the machine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the impersonation tokens using the as the Metasquirt module that you get.
Incognito probably.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Great.
If you find creds sitting on a file share or a text file or a desktop, can you manually feed them into the tool to go explore it?
So you can, yes. So that's another thing that I'm trying to kind of get at, is that, so this thing does as much as it can, and tries to look at the information that's around and use it, the idea is to use whatever information it finds in every place that it can, because that's not something that a guy would do, right? Like we will carry on using something until we've got as much information as we feel is valuable, whereas this will go ahead and carry it into exhausted all opportunities. But so one of the things that, often you see is like you will get like DNS resolvers for one domain, but then through your assessment you'll find other domains as well, which you can then plug in. So the kind of what I've modeled this after is that as soon as you see a domain, it will do certain things after finding that. So it will either find it by itself, or it will, like you can manually add it and then know that all of the steps after that will be followed. Two more questions, I think.
Can you go in like a reporting tool, obviously report on this is the one credentials you found and this is the one host, it's like exactly the screen there, but in a format that you can obviously forward onto the company to management to say this is what we are sitting at, when you're doing this assessment.
Sure. So it's something that I'm looking at. There's been asked of me before, so I'm definitely going to do it later on. So currently the stuff's in a DB. You have to kind of query it if you want to get information that's not directly in the application. But at the same time, like this is all quite fresh. But so I'm definitely going to something that I want to do. Sure. So I know there's a Python library which lets you set up. I can't remember what it's called offhand, but it lets you just create like a Word template, and then you can pull stuff in with that. So the idea is to have exactly that, just like overview summaries where you can say this is what we found, this is what we can kind of do with it. Yeah. Yes.
What kind of low-hanging fruit is already available inside it? I know you went over MS08 and SQL creds. What else is working in it?
So currently it's only those three. It's the MS0067, weak SQL creds and weak Tomcat creds. But so at the same time I've made it so that it should be easy to add things to it. So you can add just a small file which contains whatever you want. Like usually it will be an nmap script, but it's easy to make it whatever you want. So that it will look for that, and then you'll just notify it that you found a vulnerability, and then exploit it like that. So at this point, like I've been trying to just get it as a proof of concept, so that it works well enough in this environment. And I've done that, so now it's time to look for more low-hanging fruit that I can. All right, so I've got a couple more things that like Q&A that I've had from other people. Like people have asked me what's the difference between this and maybe any other vulnerability scanner. I mean, there's tons of other ones that are out there, like there's Nessus or there's Stacks. But I think the point is that like most vulnerability scanners are meant to go for breadth. So they'll look for everything, so like SSL issues, like low informational findings. Whereas what I'm trying to get at with this is more about things that you can actively exploit, and to only look for that and not look for anything else. So partly to save time, so you can cover a much bigger scope in a shorter space of time. Other like questions that I've had is like will it lock out all the accounts on my domain just by like firing it up and running it, which is a valid concern. So like I'm trying to like build steps into that now. So like I mean, one of the things that it does is, it tries whatever credits it finds in memory and tries them across the domain. So obviously, like, account lockout is a valid concern. So like what I'm doing currently, I want to make it a little bit better soon, is as soon as I pull credits out of memory, I check them, I try and see if they can log into that box or I pull them out. So that, the idea is that if you have an account, so like if your password expires after 30 days and you log in on the 29th day, and I come in 2 days later, then the credits will be in memory, but they won't work. And if I try that account across the domain, then that account will get locked. So, I try and verify them before I start trying to pivot on them. So I do that. Also, like, I only try local credentials. Like, what I'm trying to get at is to see, to find shared administrative credentials across the domain. So, like, I'm trying to sort of only try the top 3 ones that I've seen that work the most times across the domain. So that you don't try all of the administrative credits that you find everywhere. You only try the ones that are more likely to work over time, which you figure out. Yeah? Yes?
Show us the plugins.
I don't know if I have that thing working. Let's see. This is very weird. No, so I'll put everything over there. Give me a second, I'll show you guys. So I was meant to, so the first version that I released kind of had, was a very simple thing, like I just had different threads which did different pieces of work, right? Whereas now what I've tried to do is make it so that it's a lot more modular, so that the application itself doesn't actually do very much, it just kind of manages threads. And doing that, I wanted to run a live demo, but I couldn't get the internet working right. Sorry, guys. I'll show you guys. So the guys that are coming to the workshop at 10, like, I mean, we'll go through it in quite a lot of detail. But, so I put a lot of effort into making it so that the plugins are super modular, so it should be easy to add stuff as you go along. I'll show you guys that in a minute. But I mean, you guys see what I'm getting at. It's a cool thing. I mean, you can take it, the idea is that it's not super sophisticated. I mean, it doesn't do everything. It doesn't replace an analyst, but it does a lot of the initial manual work, like the first kind of 2 or 3 days worth of penetration tester work.
Get to the heart.
Yeah, exactly. It gets through all of that, but with very little input from me, which makes it so that I can spend that time, instead of going after this kind of stuff, I can spend that time going after things that are more important, while knowing that these bases have been covered.
One of the first things I downloaded,
yeah, oh really? Thanks, man. All right, so here it is. Right, so it's something that I'm working on. I mean, I'm aware of it. But so here's the thing. I'm going to have to learn how to use a computer like this. But so the first thing that I have is, where is it? So I've kind of categorized the work that I do into, so this represents those first 5 steps that I showed. So you get the printing, network pivoting. So like it's just a category that I can sort the stuff out. And then over here, so you see, it's just the name. So you say, like, this is a script that checks host for weak Tomcat credits. And that references this plugin over here, and that contains the code just to test that thing. So it kind of works like that. So you can see these are all of the things that the script knows how to look for. So these are the vulns that it looks for. So I mean, you can go through all of these things. You can see. So this is the exploitation of that thing directly. Right, so you can say, yeah, these are all of the different tasks that it knows how to do. This is what it can do. And then I've made it so that you can see, the idea is to kind of mirror me, what I would do. And so, but like it looks for these things. So basically I've got a little event management system. So it will say, like when it finds a new set of local crest, and there's certain things that you can say it will do after that. So I've got this short list of things that it can see and that it knows how to handle after it's seen. And the way that you set that up is you map here. Again, super weird. But you can say, so here's the list of things that it can see. And then so when, I can't actually read that from that angle. But so when you find when it finds a new host, it'll port scan the host. Whereas, oh my goodness. But so the idea is, like when you find a new host, then those are the things that you would typically do when you find a host. So you write a script that will do what you would do in that situation. You set it up here so that it does that. But so tons of these things. So we're like where it gets into a bit more detail is when you find different open ports, then you can do certain things depending on what port you found. So you can say something specific on that service. So like when you find a SQL server running, you check for read thread. So if you find a website, you take a screenshot of it, you kind of gather as much information as you can. But the thing that I've tried to make is so that all of the logic sits in those scripts rather than in the application. So it's easy to firstly disable the stuff. If you don't want something to happen, you just untick that box and it'll stop it. So so it makes it, try to make it as easy as I can to see exactly what it's going to do in a certain situation and, change it or add to it. Guys,
when did you start this project? When did you start this project?
About 6 months ago. As truthfully, I mean, like I started it as like a little, automatically transfer the domain and gather the IP addresses before scan the ranges, and I kind of built onto it slowly from there. Which is why it ended up being, truthfully, it was a bit of a mess at the one that I released recently, which is why I separated it into like a plugin thing so I can at least try. It's a big thing, there's a lot of moving parts, so this is the only way that I could figure out to actually make it manageable. Yes, sir?
How many design environments have you tested and what's the results like when you said the sense get credentials?
So I do. So the lab environment that we've set up is, that's the same. It's set up in the same way as any other client that we go to. It's just smaller. But I have tested it at different times. Obviously, I can't name them. But like I know the last one that I ran at had about 37,000 hosts, and the footprinting took it was just under 2 days. So the crates gathering right now using Metasploit does take a little bit of time. But the thing, like with the plugin bases, I've set it up. It makes it easy to change it. But the point is that it does work, right? It works.
Other than actually mapping the network, did you manage to get onto boxes?
Yeah, I did. So there were, in that case, there was I think 8 SQL crates and like 1 MS067. Out of that, so like a lot of the time, so in this specific case, the AV isn't set up super well, things like that. So on that client, the Metasploit stuff got cut pretty quickly, except for on 1 or 2 boxes. But after I had 1 or 2 sets of credits from that, and I found a ton of different places I could log in with that. And eventually I found quite a lot. I think it kind of does what anybody in the industry would do. I mean, it would obviously change its per client, but it does work. Yes.
You modify what you're looking for while it's running.
While it's running, no.
Okay, so once you hit
yes. So truthfully, you can't change much once it's running. Even like before you started, the idea is that that's kind of what it does. But so the idea is, to start a footprint. I don't know if you'll be in the workshop, but you'll see it's like I give it a name. Does this thing. But no, so like once it's running, I haven't made a search. You can change it. Yes, sir.
For the network administrator who's running the AV network, what is the cheapest option, or the easiest, or the less invasive option, for any sort of AV administrators to flag this kind of thing? What is the noisiest thing, the most predictable thing that you think needs to be picked up by a defender on the other side of the line?
So that's a very big question. I mean, so preventing this kind of thing. I mean, this is I think the point, the reason that everybody does this.
It's just flagging.
Right, so flagging it, sure. But so I think it's...
Questions coming from canary, right? Right? That in mind.
Okay.
I'm just more of a general intellectual question rather than picture things.
So I think it's worth saying that, the reason that I'm trying to automate this, the reason that everybody does this is because it works so well. I mean, it's something that you can teach somebody in a couple of weeks, and it really works. Like, no matter what kind of firewalls people have set up, or no matter what people have tried to do to prevent it, like, it works right away. So it's, I don't know, I think if you were to stop port scanning, like, you can see somebody that's port scanning, I think that would be your first concern.
I think Canary would do reasonably well to pick up this method anyway, because it is doing full scanning, it is doing a bunch of things that you're already doing. So it's automating the initial tasks that pen testers do.
Yes, exactly. I think that's also a good point in that this thing is not very quiet. I mean, it does less than other vuln scanners do, so it's a little bit quieter than other ones, but not really by design. It's just it does less by design. But it's still quite a noisy thing. I mean, you're not going to run this under the radar. I think it will be quite obvious if somebody does fire that. Yeah. Got any other questions? So I got tons more QA from you guys than I did from ZDX.